Good morning, planet Earth. There's been a lack of videos for a bit. The reason for that you are about to find out, and it's because I used to make these videos on nights when maybe my workload was a little bit lighter, and I had time to do this. And it turns out that based on how what my semester turned into, I don't really have a whole lot of free time anymore. So some of you might recall, or I'll give you a refresher in case you don't, that all I needed during this semester, the spring semester of my senior year, my last semester here at MIT, all I needed was political science class to finish my minor. I needed a lab, which I was going to do 5 through 10, chemistry lab for non-chem majors, to not have to do JLab. And what else? Oh, 11131, the last class to get my education license, my teaching license. And then I needed more credits, 3 more credits from somewhere. So I was like, I'll do general relativity, and that'll be fun. I had that little survey like, oh, should I do GR, string theory, particle fit, whatever, you know. And then I think I also said I was going to tack on number theory and try to do the 5 classes. So, a few things happened. First, most of you know that or if you don't, then, well, now you do. I dropped 512, which is organic chemistry, last fall, like halfway through, because I hated it. I wasn't very good at it, and I didn't like it at all. So, you know, the fact that 512 was a co-rec for this chemistry lab I was signed up for maybe should have been a hint that I might not like it so much. So, the first day of lab, I go in, and this is still under the schedule that I just said was my schedule. So I go in, and we do our, I go up to the lab on the lab day, and the lab was locked. And I was like, that's weird. And someone else came up, and they tried to get in, and the lab was still locked. So I said, oh, having trouble getting in? And they were like, yeah. And then this TA guy came, let us in, so we went inside. And after we're inside, we're like, oh, why are we the only ones here? And it's 1:05, which is when classes are supposed to start 5 minutes after the hour. There's no one there. So we're like, okay, was there a lecture beforehand? So we're like, oh, there was a lecture beforehand on safety. So we went to our big lecture hall. But 1803, which is differential equations, was meeting in there. So it turns out that it was actually in a different room, which was down the hall from the room that I'd come from. So then we went all the way to the other side of the building. So during this time period, I went from building 2, which is way over here, to building 4, which is over here. I went up 4 flights of stairs, and then down 3 flights of stairs, and then back over here, and then back up and over to 4, because then we did go to lab. So it was interesting. And we go into lab, and we're doing check-in. And what that means is they give you a sheet of paper that has a little box, a whole bunch of stuff you're supposed to have for chemistry. All the different glassware and the flasks and like clamps and stuff that you're supposed to have. And they just have a big list of it, and you're supposed to check it off. So the problem with this is I don't know any glassware. And I'm going to be honest, I'm quite surprised they even did that, because this is supposed to be like a lab class for like assuming no prior lab experience. I don't know how I'm supposed to check off something I don't know what it is. So luckily, the first list had pictures, so I'd like, alright, this flask, okay, turn around, oh, that matches, that's M. Do I have that? Yes, good. So I did that. And then, go down the list. So I finished. And then there's like 6 more of these lists of items, and I don't know what any of them are. So this is where I started leaning a little bit on my Breaking Bad knowledge, which is a show about a high school chemistry teacher who cooks meth. And turns out that in that show, right, I'm watching, and he's like, yeah, you can't cook in this. This is an Erlenmeyer flask or something like that. And I'm like, that's what Erlenmeyer flask looks like. And we did a little bit in high school chemistry that had some glassware stuff, but that was a while ago, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's been a while. 5 years ago was when I did honors chemistry 2, bringing back the high school memories. Yeah, so that was a tad ridiculous. and that didn't bode well. And then I went to the lecture, the following on, like, when was this? This must have been Thursday or Friday. I went to the lecture for the class, which was a lecture about the first lab we're going to do. And again, question having 512 as a co-rec. Because I did 512 up to the halfway point and dropped it. And they were talking about aromatic compounds and organometallic compounds. And at that point in 512, had I been doing it as a co-rex at the same time, we would have been doing resonance structures, which is like really, really basic. It's like, oh, the bond's kind of moving around like here. And it has nothing to do with these, well, it does, but like down the road. Basically, they're way, way far ahead of what you'd be covering in 512. So nothing he said made sense to me. And furthermore, they're covering, as like he's going through the steps of the lab, I didn't really grasp it. I didn't, you know, I don't know what I was, what wasn't for me. Not doing chemistry labs. So I walked out and I'm like, okay, now I'm faced with a rather difficult decision. I need to switch labs, and if I don't, I'm stuck in this lab. And if I do, what is there besides JLab? Which is the whole reason I was taking this chemistry lab, because as bad as it might be, JLab is, you know, pretty bad from what I've heard. So I was like, alright, well, what other options do I have? And over IAP, which, by the way, my teaching ended greatly. It was fun and awesome. We'll talk about that a little bit. This is probably going to be 2 videos because this is a big update. So I was like, all right. I heard about over IAP that there's a lab for nuclear engineers called Nuclear Radiation Measurement and Protection. And I looked at it. And the prerequisite was a course called 2202, which is Introduction to Applied Nuclear Physics or something like that. So I emailed both the professors who did JLab and who did this nuclear class and asked if I'd be able to join. They both said yes. The JLab guy with the stipulation that now there's an odd number of people in the class, which means that I'd have to do all the labs by myself. And at this point, one of my friends who is telling me, you should take JLab, you should take JLab, it's so good, you should take JLab, said, no, don't do it, don't take JLab by yourself. So there was that. And there's also the fact that this other lab, the nuclear lab, the professor for this also said yes, and he said I didn't have to take the 2202 prereq because I had so much, like it covers a lot of the same stuff as I've covered before in the physics classes, like quantum mechanics and statistical mechanics. So I've already covered a lot of the content. So I was like, alright, well, this would be cool. Nuclear, so this is physics. I like physics, obviously. It's much more up my alley than is chemistry. So I thought, give it a shot. So I went, looking good. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next video. I suppose I'll talk about that because this has to do with my new schedule. So I'm going to stop now because I'm running out of time here. Tune into the next one, which has the same title as this one, but part 2. And it should probably be in the sidebar, I would guess. Maybe I'll even put a link to it in the description if I can, if I'm awake when I stop. So, yeah. Keep watching, because now you get to hear the exciting story of the monstrosity that my schedule turned into, and that I'm happy about it. Momentary peace.